Welcome to Going Over Our Freds, the only podcast that is attempting to watch every movie made by the great Fred Olin Ray. I'm Kennedy, and across from me is...
Meredith.
She's not actually across from me, but we're both in Chicago. It's fine. I don't want to start, on a lie. So what movie did we watch today, Meredith?
Today we watched, last night, since we're not lying.
Oh, right.
We watched Critical Mass for this episode, a 2001 action movie.
So I picked this movie for a couple of reasons. Fred Olin Ray did an interview like 15 years ago where the guy asked him, are you more of a Hollywood chainsaw hookers guy or more of a bikini drive-in sort of guy? And he said, I'm more of a critical mass guy. I like to blow stuff up. Now, normally I am reluctant to do things that are only available on DVD. I'm doing a lot of talking at the beginning, because I want people to be able to easily stream the movies that we're talking about. But this one is only available on DVD, at least in America legally. There's going to be a lot of stuff to talk about in this movie. But Meredith, why don't you start us off?
It was a blast from the past of nostalgia to have the TV start and be presented with a menu.
Yes.
Do you want to play the movie? Do you want to access special features? I didn't even know I was nostalgic for it until I'd been confronted with it. I just hadn't seen that in, 15 years. So see, you can cut all that off, and I'm going to pause, and we're going to go into the...
It's all staying in. I don't know what you're talking about. It's all staying in. No, the special features of this movie are here's a list of the cast, here's some pictures, here's some still frames from the movie.
The movie opens on a dark road at night with the Terminator 2 soundtrack. They're ripping off Terminator 2. And just like in T2, our point of view is driving along that dark road. And where are we going? We're going to an office building, and this office building looks just like an office building that featured in Terminator 2, where they go to stop the guy from being able to build the robot arm before he actually builds the robot arm. That office building.
I think Joe Morton is the scientist that's going to create the Terminator whole thing in Terminator 2. He's that black guy who plays a scientist and everything. Yeah. So it's that office building where they killed him. Yeah. They went to his house, and then he helped them break into Cyberdyne to blow up the hand and the microchip.
In Critical Mass, that building houses a company called Cyberdyne.
Which is the name of the company in Terminator.
Wait, really?
Yes.
Oh, so we're in the same universe?
Nope. Let's finish this scene and we'll talk about this.
All right, okay, so we get to the office building. Right off the bat, I'm like, what's going on? Where am I? Where's my title card to give me tons of context? There's no title card. It was even really a Fred Olin Ray movie. A group of men arrive in a van that is decked out like a police van, but it's not. They get out, they're in full tactical gear. They go into the office building, Cyberdyne, and interact with the security guard. They kill him right away. This is basically Die Hard. Unlike in Die Hard, the security guard is able to flip the silent alarm before he dies, but the robbers don't know that. And they are now in the building up to shenanigans.
Yeah, we have shades of Terminator 2. We have shades of Die Hard, which, the movie's mostly going to be Die Hard for the middle part. And then we immediately jump to another scene. They basically just do the opening sequence of The Rock next. Our elite squad goes and steals from a tube of dangerous green stuff.
It's they find all the barrels of radioactive material, and they look at it, just to confirm that it's glowing green and is indeed radioactive, like you do. They steal it. They plant a bunch of explosives all over the place. Police have arrived because the security guard tripped the silent alarm, and these guys get away in a spectacular car chase with a police helicopter flying dangerously close to the highway, and it ends in a wonderful crash and high production value.
So here's the thing. It's almost a subgenre of these DTV, these direct-to-video movies from 2000 to 2005 that were somehow just purchasing footage from other movies. So if you look at the reverse shot here, all these shots are just direct from Terminator 2. Now, this is not like completely unprecedented in movies. Like Indiana Jones reuses some of the map burning stuff from older movies. Bill and Ted reuses scenes from War and Peace to kind of fill up their extras and make production value. Famously, everybody was angry at Star Trek Generations because they used the exact same ship explosion from Star Trek 6. Like 2 movies back to back had the same like explosion. But in these movies that were made primarily by Jim Wynorski, who is Fred Olen Ray's partner in crime and a producer in this movie, they would just full out buy entire action sequences from other movies and put them in their movies. So, like, if you look, like, instead of the Terminator...
So, like, do you mean they're buying the intellectual property rights to make the shots, or they're buying footage that was already shot?
They're buying footage that's already shot. So, normally what happens is a situation like... this is something that Ridley Scott does. He will buy, for Blade Runner, they needed shots of traveling in the mountains for the end of that movie for one of the cuts. So he just bought some unused footage from Stanley Kubrick's The Shining because, you know, Stanley Kubrick, he had like 80 hours of footage from a helicopter flying over mountains. And, you know, unused footage would be used in other movies. And that's how it normally works. But with these Jim Wynorski movies, they would just buy the entire action sequences and just cut it together with their own stuff. So, like, this is the released footage from Terminator 2. Like, instead of the Terminator throwing the desk through the window in this action sequence, it's our bad guys. They're cleverly disguised to not let you know that they're different actors in there because half the time they're stuntmen in these action sequences anyway. So you watch this and you're like, how could they possibly get away with this? And I'm not sure. I spent so much time looking this stuff up. And a lot of these movies came from companies like Coralco, Orion, Golden Globus, these companies that went bankrupt in the 90s. So different companies would buy out different rights to the movies, and then the kind of who owns what rights would be kind of nebulous. And since these weren't theatrically released movies, people were like, oh yeah, you can have that. So for example, so this movie, the entire opening sequence is Terminator 2, and the entire ending sequence is stolen from Universal Soldier. So Jim Wynorski made a movie in 2000 called Rangers, which uses sequences from the Delta Force, Invasion USA, The Hidden, Red Heat, and Navy SEALs. It's like a weird mashup movie. It's like he's a DJ. Similarly, there's also Gale Force, and Extreme Limits, which were made in 2002 and 2000. And Gale Force reuses stuff from Predator, Anaconda, and Last Action Hero. And Extreme Limits, which it has another name too, like they all have multiple names because these were direct-to-video movies, reuses stuff from Cliffhanger and The Long Kiss Goodnight and a movie called Narrow Margin. Now, what is also interesting about this movie is that Gale Force and Extreme Limits, while they're both directed by Jim Wynorski and not Fred Olen Ray, guess who both of those movies star? Treat Williams, the star of this movie. So it's a whole subgenre of Treat Williams, like, starring in these almost fake action movies from, like, the year 2000 to about 2004. I think it is Gale Force. It even has Treat Williams changing outfits before an action sequence, so he will match how Arnold Schwarzenegger looks in Last Action Hero. So it's amazing and shameless at the same time, and probably more interesting than anything that happens in the movie itself. And if it's not like completely obvious that the movie suddenly loses production values after the first reel, after that big fancy wonderful action sequence at the beginning, we immediately cut to probably the cheapest superimposed text on screen right in the very next shot of introducing our location of a nuclear facility.
So the helicopter sequence was from T2?
Yes.
I feel robbed.
Yeah, so if you're watching this movie, you're like, wow, they really went all out. This is a fantastic action sequence. I wasn't expecting this from Fred Olen Ray. I'm like, well, it's not really. Well, actually, we should also say that if you look at the credits on the film itself, this is not a movie directed by Fred Olen Ray. This is directed by one of his aliases, Ed Raymond, which, how could you possibly crack that code, that Ed Raymond is Fred Olen Ray?
Similarly, why the alias?
I don't know. Maybe what they were doing was questionably legal, or maybe he didn't want to take credit for a movie that was only about half his. I'm not really sure. Similarly, Jim Wynorski, when he does these movies, he's credited as, I believe, Noble Henry, which I don't know where that came from.
Oh my God. I'm a little floored. I was thinking that it was just a really good ripoff, and what it truly is the cast-offs of a much better movie.
Yeah, and it's was it just a guy who's like, listen, I can sell you these under the table for a couple of $1,000s.
Wow.
Like, yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. All right. Next scene, we're out in the desert somewhere, and we're at a nuclear power plant. Okay, sorry. I'm still a little flabbergasted. Anyway.
Well, I watched this movie and my jaw hung open. I'm like, wait, I thought it would be subtle, but it is not subtle.
I know, it's like a shitty movie the next day. All right. Okay. So we're at a nuclear power plant. It's the next morning. I didn't catch the name of the place. I didn't catch what the security guys were saying, but I did catch that there was some unpleasant task that they were all trying not to do. So they cut a deck of cards to see like who draws like the worst card, and they have to go do the unpleasant task. So our security guards, they all seem pretty friendly. I recognize half of them. We've got that guy number 1. Definitely recognize him. We've got that guy number 2. Absolutely recognize him. We've got a black guy that I did not see before. Do not recognize him. And their boss, which is also a white guy that I did not recognize. So who are these guys, and why are the two that guys that guys?
Okay. I was trying to figure out who the white security guard was and the black security guard are, and maybe he just has one of those faces. I was not able to kind of figure that out, which is disappointing for me. The boss is
he's been in like 90s crime shows. I just couldn't place him.
Yeah, like he's got like one-off appearances on 90s crime shows. That's pretty much it. The boss guy is the sheriff from the original Halloween, and he returns in Halloween Kills. So that's like his big claim to fame. He's done some other stuff, but nothing like super crazy. And our main star, as I mentioned previously, is the Treat Williams. That's right, the Treat Williams. So do you recognize Treat Williams for anything, or is he just that guy to you?
He was a that guy to me. I know that I've seen him. Honestly, I think I saw him in movies back in college when you were making us watch these terrible movies.
Well, so Treat Williams is one of those guys that could really show up in anything. He kind of got his start in Hair. He might have been in the musical version before he was in the actual like movie version. He was the best part of the Billy Zane movie, The Phantom. You know, when Billy Zane played the purple-clad superhero. Treat Williams was just overacting, and he played the villain in that. He is probably known to our generation of people as the main guy from Everwood. This was like a WB show in the vein of like Dawson's Creek and Jack and Bobby and that sort of era. It was on a couple of years. That's where Chris Pratt came from. He was in The Substitute, a movie about like a psycho substitute teacher. It's a series of horror movies there. He is in Dead Heat, which is another like classic 80s. It's a buddy cop movie where one of the buddy cops becomes a zombie.
I can't believe I haven't seen this.
Oh yeah, you should totally watch Dead Heat. It's worth watching. You'd watch it. You'd like it. Treat Williams is always better than he needs to be.
He was pretty good in this, yeah.
Yeah, he's trying in this movie. Yeah, he's charming. He's kind of handsome. He's so close to being a real movie star.
Okay. So the security guards have drawn cards, and Treat Williams draws the worst card, and he has to accompany the boss on some unpleasant task. And what is that task? It is babysitting a visiting senator and the senator's entourage who are on site that day to do a tour and kind of film the tour. It's part of what I believe to be the senator's re-election campaign.
Yeah, so not only does he lose, but the first security guard draws a 3 when he cuts the cards, but, our hero draws a 2 because he's just got the worst luck ever. That's his main character trait, is that he's got terrible, terrible luck. So
yeah, that comes back later. Yep.
And our senator is Andrew Prine. He's one of those guys that's done a bunch of stuff, too. Probably his biggest part was he was Helen Keller's dad in The Miracle Worker in 1967.
I recognized the senator and put him in my notes as that guy number 3. His face bothered me so much because I was like, oh, I've seen him recently. I just couldn't place him. So I looked him up. And where I recognize him from is as a Puritan, religious guy from the movie The Lords of Salem.
Oh, yeah.
I just got around to watching a couple of years ago. And he's got that perfect Puritan, New England, Salem persecution face. You just need a really long face, and he's got it.
This guy actually just died on Halloween of this past year, so.
Which is a shame.
Yeah, we need more long-faced character actors out there.
I mean, he could have been another, if David Carradine hadn't taken the role of Gordon Fisk in the last movie in Evil Toons, this guy could have done that role too. But now they're both dead, so where are our next generation of Puritan ministers coming from? I don't see them.
I think this guy is more of a Keith Carradine than a David Carradine, but go on,
All right. Well, all of this is leading up to the senator's press secretary, who is Lori Loughlin.
Famous for being Aunt Becky and famous for Operation Varsity Blues is what they called when they got all the rich people busted for...
Oh, she was one of those?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Okay, so here we are. Treat Williams is on guard duty or escort duty for the senator and Aunt Becky. And in our brief interaction, we just kind of get the sense that the senator is an asshole, that the senator is very proud of his service in Vietnam, and that Aunt Becky is enabling him, but she is basically early career and is just kind of a yes man or a yes person to the senator. There's the rest of the entourage, and they're just getting ready to tour the facility. So we cut back to the robbers, and they're back in their van. They're on their way to this power plant. As soon as they arrive, they take advantage of the general kind of confusion of having visitors in the plant and gain access right away. And
yeah.
This is partially due to all the security guys being so kind and friendly and guileless that guy number 1 from all the 90s crime shows is like, oh yeah, come on in. You want to go find the senator? And he turns his back and points to where the senator would be, and they shoot and kill him immediately. Incredible security at the power plant. Okay.
So what is their plan here, though? Because they robbed a nuclear facility. Mm-hmm. Is it a nuclear power plant that they're also trying to blow up?
Okay, so yeah, in the dialogue, they're indicating that it is a nuclear power plant, although I'm not an expert on nuclear power plants, but they didn't have the cooling towers, so maybe they were filming it just where they could find a place to film, and they just told everybody, yes, nuclear, right? So,
but why would you need to take nuclear material to the nuclear power plant? I don't understand.
That is a great point, and it's because nuclear power plants are very safe and they have lots of safeguards. So their plan is to build a dirty bomb with the nuclear material that they stole from, what was it called? Sensodyne? Cyberdyne?
Sensodyne is the toothpaste.
They stole the nuclear material because they want to explode a dirty bomb because they are somehow politically, or at least some of them believe that this is a political group, and they want to make some sort of political point by having a nuclear disaster happen, but they have to manufacture the disaster because simply blowing up a regular bomb that they have the capability to do would not be enough to trigger the type of terrible accident that they need to in order to make their point. So they have to make it a dirty bomb, so they had to get the nuclear material from a different facility.
Okay. So
this is not explained in the movie, but it's the only way to make it make sense.
Okay.
What doesn't make sense is that They stole the material the night before, evidently drove all night to get to this new plant, and they haven't yet built the bomb. Their plan is to take over the facility and build the bomb on site, and it's going to take, and I quote, a couple hours.
Well, I mean, why would you build the bomb beforehand? You don't want it. You want it to be fresh.
Exactly, and that is what this movie hinges on, and it doesn't make any sense, and so you have to let it go and go for the ride. But that is
bombs are like bagels. After 24 hours, you don't even want them.
It is something. It's something. Anyway, so it turns into Die Hard. They cut the phone lines. They drive the van into the power plant, so they've got their whole van and bomb making setup inside the facility. Meanwhile, the senator and the tour entourage have not noticed that anything's wrong.
So quick note, while they're breaking in, they do pass by the vehicle from Universal Soldier, which is just sitting there for no reason. And they're like, what's that? And they're like, oh, I don't know. It's not going to pop up later. So they managed to trick out something to look like the Universal Soldier bus for the final reel of this movie. And you have not at all mentioned the leader of the bad guys here, who is the second most famous person in this movie.
Okay, I call him Head Robber.
Now, if you were to cast this guy in a movie, what would you cast him as?
A Nazi.
A Nazi? Yeah. Or if you were to cast him as a monster?
Oh, a vampire elder.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
He is old vampire in every movie. His name is Udo Kier.
Mm-hmm.
He has been around forever. Like, he is the old vampire in Blade that Stephen Dorff kills off.
Yeah.
He's even in the new Pitch Perfect movie. He's just constantly working.
Pitch Perfect is a vampire movie?
Well, not anymore. No, he is not a vampire in that. Although I haven't watched that. That's the male Pitch Perfect that came out on Peacock. He was in Blood Rain, which is another vampire movie. He was in the classic movie Fear.com.com. He was in Johnny Mnemonic. He was in Ace Ventura. And he was in all the Andy Warhol monster movies from the 70s, like Blood for Dracula and Flesh for Frankenstein. He was playing like the title characters of those guys. Those were are called Andy Warhol. They were directed by Paul Morrissey. And he was in Suspiria too. So like this guy is a like horror movie staple. I don't know what he's doing in this movie. I can't tell if he's trying or not trying at any point. Udo Kier is a Schrodinger's cat to me at times. Like,
my husband asked me if this guy was trying to sound like Arnold Schwarzenegger, and no, I think this guy just has the same accent as Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, I believe that Udo Kier is German and Schwarzenegger is Austrian, so they have slightly different accents, but
slightly, but very slightly, not something that your average Midwestern accented person is going to catch on to.
Yeah.
So, okay, Head Robber with his ice blue eyes and his silver hair and vampire-looking face, he's in charge. He infiltrates the tour group because he's dressed like an executive from Chase Bank on Casual Friday. He blends right in. Perfect. No notes.
Checks out. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep. Meanwhile, he's got a whole group of guys who are doing his bidding, and they're kind of just taking over in the background. They like kill a bunch of, I think they're killing security guards. They take over the room with all the cameras, all that stuff. The details are not important. They take over. They're in charge.
The only thing that really happens of note is that one of them tries to trick the sheriff from Halloween into letting him take over one room, and the sheriff from Halloween outdraws him and kills the bad guy, but then is immediately killed himself.
Yeah.
So that actor got to die with dignity. It feels like a thing that the actor's like, I don't want to just get killed. I want to kill somebody before I die. So.
And there's plenty of robbers to go around, right? Because
exactly.
As we'll trace through, there are several shootouts. Several.
An almost boring amount of shootouts that are completely drained of excitement in this movie.
I mean, in my notes, it was like, oh, another shootout. Okay, so we're on the tour, and now we're doing a little bit of character development. We learn a little bit more about Treat Williams' character's background, and Aunt Becky is a little bit confused. She's like, why are you a security guard here? because he's got an Air Force background and he's very humble about his achievements and accomplishments, which gives him this aura of competence, right? He's not a very confident man. He's like, oh, I have really bad luck, but he's got the aura of competence, which I think Aunt Becky really picks up on because she's used to working with the senator who does not have that aura of competence, and he lashes out at people whenever he feels threatened in any way. So Aunt Becky and Treat Williams, they're getting along, they're friendly. Senator's like, rah, 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 we're on a tour. Finally, there's a shootout. Like, the robbers make themselves known, they start shooting at the tour group, and they kill almost everybody on that tour group. Like the camera
they kill
guy.
The camera guy and all of his crew. Pretty much everybody is instantly killed except for Aunt Becky, Senator, and Treat Williams, right? Are there any other survivors?
No. It is the most effective shootout of the movie. Just terrible carnage. People go down left and right. I was like, wow, they really got started quickly. Okay. Our three main characters now, they run and hide. They are very lucky. They're just like, oh my gosh, we gotta hide. We gotta call for help. Treat Williams discovers that the phone lines have been cut, and he's like, oh no. But luckily, Aunt Becky has a cell phone. What? Oh my God, this is brand new tech for the day. He's like, wow. He calls the local sheriff because we're out in like unincorporated wherever, middle of nowhere. Yeah. Sheriff is like, why didn't you call me on the landline? And he's like, the landlines have been cut. I'm on a cell phone. It's amazing. They're so thrilled. They're so chuffed.
And the sheriff is Blake Clark, who's been in a bunch of stuff. He was like in The Waterboy and stuff like that. He is the replacement for Slinky Dog in the Toy Story movies since Jim Varney died.
Oh, wow. He looks kind of like John Goodman from Roseanne.
He looks a little bit like John Goodman, and he looks a little bit like a younger version of the dude that played Nathan Arizona in Raising Arizona. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the Coen brothers have used Blake Clark a couple of times as kind of replacement to that dude. But yeah, he's just one of those old character actors who you've seen in a bunch of stuff, who, if you're casting like a southern kind of genteel kind of guy, I feel like you get him.
All right, so the sheriff sends a car with two guys to go check it out, and the robbers immediately take care of those two guys. It's a shootout. There's explosions. These two guys are killed. The sheriff hears it all on the walkie-talkie. He's very upset. And then he basically sends a bunch of cars and calls the feds.
When the cars show up after these two guys are killed, it is like 4 cop cars, and it really is a stark contrast to the like 24 cop cars we had because we had Terminator 2 money at the beginning of the movie. Now we've got 4 cars and a couple of extras in the background money.
Well, I thought that was more of a just illustrating how resource constrained this rural county police force is.
Yeah, it's a feature, not a bug. Also, pretty much every time somebody gets shot in the original footage, made for the movie Critical Mass and not for other movies, they're just kind of bloodlessly fall down. Like, is there any blood in this movie apart from the, bigger budget movies?
At some point, the senator's arm gets hurt and his shirt's red, but that's it. Okay. You're right.
Yeah.
It is a shoot, scream, fall, you're done. Next guy. Shoot, scream, fall, you're done.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the facility where the senator, Treat Williams, Aunt Becky have found a hiding spot, they hear that shootout, that initial shootout where the two guys are killed. And they need to investigate. They're like, is the situation over? Has it resolved? Like, what's going on? Does somebody need help? They don't know, so they need to go out and figure it out. The senator is like, hell no, I'm going to stay in hiding. You don't know what's out there. Treat Williams is like, I need to know what happens. Maybe I can help. Aunt Becky is not loyal to the senator. She's like, I'm going with this guy who seems competent. What she says is, I'm going to go with the guy who has the gun. But what she means is that she has confidence in this guy's competence. Okay?
Yeah.
Treat Williams still has Aunt Becky's phone. The exact
he just has all these phone numbers memorized.
Yeah, he would.
And they're just constantly walking around this fairly brightly lit factory setting,
Yeah.
making loud phone conversations when they're supposed to be. There's no tension whatsoever. It's just like, yeah, oh yeah, the bad guys are out here still. You coming?
Right.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, he's like, get out here. I think they're making a bomb. Right, because he overhears some stuff and he's like, yeah, I think they're making a bomb. Okay, so now the sheriff knows that there's potentially a bomb situation. He relays this to the feds. The senator gets flushed out of his hiding spot, and a robber is pointing his gun at the senator, and the senator's only objection is, but I'm a senator. He's not hurt badly. He's hurt, but he's not going to die.
Yeah.
Treat Williams comes out of nowhere, defeats the robber. Aunt Becky helps, and Treat Williams spares the robber's life in order to get information out of him, right? Because he's thinking ahead. He's a smart guy. Meanwhile, we see the sheriff who is trying to put pressure on the feds to send backup because he's like, we're just like a rural sheriff's office out here. We do not have what we need to negotiate the situation. And he's absolutely right. The feds are running it up the chain of command, trying to get like the Secretary of Defense involved because this is a potential nuclear incident. They don't really know the nature of the attack yet. And our main like contact there is popping antacids, and they play this for comedic effect.
It's every day is a Tums festival. It's
Yeah.
it's basically the Cameron Mitchell part. So that's Richard McGonigal, who's done a bunch of stuff and is mainly a voice actor now. And because everybody is a replacement Pixar character in this movie, he is who Pixar gets to voice Mr. Incredible when Craig T. Nelson is not available. It's all
Nice.
one tiny connected world.
Nice.
And the attorney general that they're talking to is a guy named Jack Betts. Who I think he died probably during the course of this movie. He is looking very old. He's got another name too. He's one of these guys that's been around since like the 40s. I think modern audiences would probably most know him as either the judge in Office Space who says, I sentence you to a federal pound you in the ass prison. He's also one of the board members that the Green Goblin blows up in the first Sam Raimi Spider-Man.
Nice.
He's got one of those faces. He's done a ton of stuff.
He looks kind of out of place. His hair and the pinstripe suit is a little out of place, but
Yeah.
he's super old. What are you going to do? He got dressed. It's fine. Okay.
You haven't mentioned our, I think, second female character in this movie who stands in the background.
Well, because she's standing in the background not doing anything.
Yeah, she eventually gets like 3 lines, but like that's it. There's like 2 female characters in this entire movie that are never within 100 miles of each other, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So tell us about her.
Oh, blonde lady who stands behind Alan Gold, the Richard McGonigal character. She is Shanna Mokler, who is, I think she was Miss New York 1995. And she is a famous wife and girlfriend, basically. She was with Oscar de la Hoya for like 3 years in the late 90s. And then she was married to Travis Barker for about 4 years. So
Professional trophy.
yeah, I guess so. Well, when you're Miss New York, that's your job, right? But
Yeah.
so you get married to Blink 182, and that's what happens.
Her style was very much of the time, and she did look young to have the in-movie job that the character had, but I just
You don't think
figured-
a 25-year-old would have that job?
No. Her dialogue was intelligent. She appeared to be doing as good a job as she could. You know, she wasn't like the worst actor I've ever seen. Aside from Aunt Becky, her personal like style, how she was put together was very much of the time, like 99, 2000. And that's the way that you can really date this movie, because the rest of the characters are just like men's fashion doesn't change.
Well, and it's a movie where a bunch of middle-aged white guys fight each other.
Yeah, the senator could be like walking down the street in that suit and tie and whatever. Yeah, like his hairstyle is still like contemporary even.
Yeah, but meanwhile, you can tell when a movie came out based on how thick the women's eyebrows are.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
exactly. And also, Aunt Becky's hair, she's got what I can only describe as the Rachel cut, but like a little bit shorter, and it's flat ironed to death. So whereas the Rachel cut, Rachel from the character from Friends, would have her hair blown out and kind of like have a gentle inward curl. In this movie, the character's hair is just flat ironed straight. They're pin straight, straighter than like a natural like straight would be. And that was also very much of the fashion of the time.
You know, I didn't think that this would be the movie where we'd really take it to the patriarchy like this, Meredith, but I think that's what we're doing now.
It's just like...
Weird.
Well, I guess you could also date the movie by the emergence of cell phone technology and how new it was.
You wouldn't date it by like looking in the background and saying, "Hey, that's the blonde lady from Pacific Blue, the USA cop show."
No.
Where the cops are on bicycles.
No.
Man, I miss those stupid USA shows.
It was set. Okay, so if you remember Terminator 2, the background settings like were in office buildings that were, I think, brand new at the time, and they're still all around us. Those buildings haven't, they're a little dated, but they're still everywhere, right? And the rest of the movie takes place in the desert. You're just looking at mountains and shit.
So what you're saying is this movie is timeless.
Timeless, absolutely timeless, yes.
As timeless as a Die Hard in a blank can be, which is another subgenre
Die Hard
of movie.
in a power plant.
Yeah, this isn't even the only Die Hard in a nuclear power plant movie. Like,
oh, really?
Yeah, this is.
They're like, do a Die Hard. Let's do a Die Hard.
You know, if you there's a whole Die Hard in a blank wiki out there too. If you look at it, so
I'm gonna look that up. That's amazing. Okay, all right, back to the movie. We have a little cutaway scene where the sheriff is talking to one of his deputies and gives a little bit more context to Treat Williams's backstory, right? So the question is, like, why is this guy who was in the Air Force working at a lousy security guard job? Like, what happened? And there's also apparently some rumors that he is a, and I quote, gutless coward. So the sheriff tells a story saying, all this terrible stuff happened and Treat Williams was the sole survivor, and rumors started that like he hid and didn't fight and blah, blah, blah. But that's not true. I know this guy. He is a good and honorable man. And you're just like, okay, great.
It's Larry Cohen's Branded. That's his backstory.
Nice.
All but one man died. Which I think more people probably know from The Big Lebowski than the actual show at this point. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So we get this backstory. It's kind of unnecessary, but they spent a lot of time on it. Treat Williams calls sheriff. He's learned a little bit more through eavesdropping. He's like, it is definitely a bomb this time. And sheriff is like, calls the feds. He's like, it's definitely a bomb. And now we get a little bit of a more context with the scene with the robber who is building the bomb, and I call him Nerd Robber because he's the only one with glasses and a brain.
Yeah, his name is Bream, I think. He's played by Doug McCown, who was like a young person actor. He was on Golden Pond in like 1981, and nothing super famous after that, really.
Yeah, I didn't recognize him at all, and his character is pretty understandable. He was brought on to the crew in order to build the bomb. Through some dialogue, we understand that he is attached to this crew because he's got some political motivation. He's like, this is a political act. I am making my voice heard through this bomb. You're like, okay, great.
We're not doing this for the money. Why are you also asking for money?
Yeah, so, exactly. You're just like, all right, guys. Meanwhile, right, so the senator got flushed out of his hiding spot, and they defeated the robber that flushed out the senator. So now our three folks, Treat Williams, the senator, and Aunt Becky, they need a new hiding spot. They get into a shootout while they're on their search for a new hiding spot. In this shootout, the notable difference is that Treat Williams shoots the robber, and the robber falls backwards into a bunch of equipment that immediately, like, he gets electrocuted in a shower of sparks.
This is the highlight of the non-stolen footage part of the movie, where he just goes...
Yes, okay. Yes. And we're like cutting back and forth between like backstory, what's going on in the feds, and shootouts at the plant. So this was like a cut to the shootout at the plant.
Yeah, this movie doesn't really flow. It's just kind of a slog between stolen footage, right? Like,
Yes. So our next cut is we meet Carl Wendt, and they said his name a couple of times, so I was actually able to catch it and write it down. He is a young scientist from Cyberdyne, and
he's our nuclear expert, and he's that guy from Bones.
That guy from Bones.
Yeah.
So he's there in order to provide expert counsel and then, if possible, disarm the bomb. And we learn through this guy that the robbers have stolen enough radioactive material to make a bomb that would create another disaster the size of Chernobyl.
Now, are they near a city or anything like that? Did they say? Like, because they seem to be in the middle of the desert.
Later on, when the bomb situation gets a little bit more tense and the sheriff and the government is like, we're going to evacuate everybody within like a whatever radius, presumably there is a town within that radius, but we never see it.
Yeah, there's no like stock footage of people driving their cars out of town or anything like that or anything. Yeah.
Right.
The stakes seem to be kind of arbitrary and imaginary. I'm not really sure.
Yeah. Meanwhile, in DC, I guess, Miss New York 1995 is saying, hey, we need to like get our act together and start doing stuff for this because, to quote, we can't afford another Waco.
Oh shit. God. This that dates the movie, right?
Yes, it does. And it's also, this is not Waco. This is not Waco.
It's not Waco, but you know, if the movie were filmed like a literal year later or 2 years later, it'd be like, we can't have another 9/11. But that was just what we had at the time. So
and I guess what actually happened in Waco was still very poorly understood by the general public right after it happened. Okay. At this point, the head robber calls the feds, and now he's saying, hey, yeah, we're in the plant, and we've got a list of demands. And wouldn't you know it? Wouldn't you fucking know it? He's got this completely unique list of demands that I've never heard in another movie in my life. And that list of demands is...
the Die Hard list.
It's the Die Hard list. He wants like a list of prisoners to be freed from prison. He wants $50 million, and he wants a helicopter for their getaway.
Yeah.
You couldn't like come up with a fresh list?
Who are the political prisoners he wants to release? Like, I know you have a whole theory of it being like about the safety of nuclear power or something. I have no idea.
They mentioned it later on. Miss New York 1995 mentioned it, I think. Anyway, there are a bunch of... They have nothing to do with this. They mentioned the list as being a who's who of American terrorists, which tracks with Die Hard because their demand of prisoners to be freed also had nothing to do with what they were doing. It was just a distraction. But in this movie, it doesn't seem to be meant as a distraction. It seems to be a sincere list of demands.
Yeah, because even Bream, the second in command, he's like, well, why are you asking for money?
Yeah.
Well, so this is the main problem. This is why the middle part is a slog, is that everybody has already been killed off except for 3 people, our 2 leads who we know are going to survive, and the senator who's an asshole who we don't care if he dies or not. We don't know what the criminals want. We know what they can possibly do, but we don't know why they're going to do it.
Exactly.
And there's really nothing human about them. The kind of like go through the motions version of a Die Hard story with occasionally hilarious somebody gets electrocuted by being shot.
Yeah, totally. Okay, so here we are. List of demands has been put out into the world. Head robber says you've got 4 hours to do these things. So now we have a time limit. There will be an end to this movie. Thank goodness. The senator, Aunt Becky, and Treat Williams have now managed to leave the facility. They are still on the grounds, but they are outdoors. And they're like, okay, we're almost to freedom. We're almost out of the situation. All we need to do is like go over there, and then the sheriffs will see us and we'll be safe. The senator takes off running, and I thought this was the best shot of the movie. He steps on a landmine running full speed, and in just like the most bonkers defying of physics ever. He's not blown up by the landmine. He is simply launched to do the spectacular leap as the explosion happens behind him. And yet he is killed.
If there were more things like that in the movie, it would be a more watchable movie. But that looked expensive, so I can see why they only did that once. It would almost be worth killing the hostages individually if they all died amazingly like that. Basically just make a slasher movie only with a Die Hard.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Now we're cutting back to the government. They're not going to meet any of the demands. That's the end of that.
They don't negotiate with terrorists.
Exactly. Now, back to Treat Williams and Aunt Becky. All right, so Senator's dead. Treat Williams and Aunt Becky, they abort the plan to escape the facility. They don't know if there's more landmines. And in addition to that, they have made a decision to stay and fight and try to defeat the robbers from the inside. I don't understand why, but that's what they decided to do. Okay, now it's kind of like a cartoon where you have like the cat chasing the mouse for most of the movie. At this point, now the mouse is chasing the cat. So they're hunting the robbers now. Like Treat Williams's security guard pistol and Aunt Becky's no weapons at all. Perfect. Okay. Then we cut to head robber. He's doing some exposition. We are maybe going to get a clue as to his motivations. And I wrote this down because it really it resonates in this moment in time. He says, when thousands, maybe millions of people die, then people will wake up. So I had to Google how many people have died as of last night of COVID-19, and the tally...
That's like 2 million?
No, 6,837,663 as of last night, which was February 3rd, 2023. That's a global count, not in America.
Yeah.
Moving on, the robbers catch Treat Williams and Aunt Becky off guard. They get the upper hand. But then Treat Williams, he gets the upper hand and throws one robber like off the catwalk and it's a controlled
railing
fall.
death, yeah.
And now all we have left is the nerd robber who built the bomb. So he finished building the bomb and the head robber is like, now you're a goon. You've changed your jobs. You're a goon now. And the nerd robber does not want to be a goon. So Treat Williams is able to talk him down and disarms him. And now we're like, oh, we might be getting towards the end of the movie, but we are not. And this is at the point of the movie where at the Pentagon they're like, okay, evacuate the area. So we have like some evacuation talk going on in the background. Treat Williams now uses nerd robber as a hostage in order to gain access or get close to the head robber because he wants to talk and like maybe talk the head robber down. That does not work. Another shootout ensues. And now we get like the big fight of the movie. And it's first just a shootout between head robber and Treat Williams. Then it's kind of like hand to hand. And then the head robber kind of gets away a little bit. Gets onto...
like a cherry picker or something, right?
Yeah, that's a really good description of what it is. I don't know the exact term, but we're in the power plant. There's lots of heavy equipment moving stuff. So he like gets into this cherry picker type thing and is slowly going up. Enough.
Yeah, it's like they're having the final battle in a hot air balloon basket, but without the hot air balloon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So Treat Williams is able to recover from his prior blow and catch up and like leap onto the side of the cherry picker and like try to like get up there, and they're struggling, and then Aunt Becky finds a machine gun because a bunch of the robbers have had machine guns this whole time. That's the source of the shootouts. She just points and sprays in their general direction.
That seems safe.
Super safe. And miraculously, this is truly a Christmas miracle, she hits the head robber and Treat Williams is not hurt at all.
Funny for a guy with such bad luck that he was completely safe. Yeah.
It's amazing. Okay, so head robber is for all intents and purposes at this point in the movie, he is dead.
Yeah, he like falls out of the bucket and like splatters onto the ground.
Yeah,
but doesn't he fall into boxes or something? I don't know.
Barrels of whatever. Yeah. Discarded a pile of barrels. And actually he is quite bloody. which we didn't remember earlier in this conversation.
Oh, yeah. He gets to be bloody at the end, so.
Yeah, he's pretty bloody. They saved all of their Caro syrup. Right.
Yeah, they only had so much.
So now there's a little bit of a celebration, and Treat Williams and Aunt Becky are like, okay, we've cleared the situation, and the sheriff's like, amazing, get in there, Carl, and disarm the bomb. So there's a little bit of a changing of the guard. Carl's like, we don't have a lot of time to disarm the bomb, right? Because they armed it and there's a countdown. He's like, I don't know if I can do it in time. So what they do is a compromise. Treat Williams says, I know of a ravine nearby where if, like, we're going to try and disarm this bomb, but if we don't in time, we can just throw it into the ravine and kind of contain the damage. So what they do is they get on a bus, what kind of looks like a school bus, but it's like an institutional bus, and then they speed towards the ravine at over 50 miles per hour. Carl's on the bus trying to...
Now you think it's a ripoff of Speed, but then they just do Universal Soldier. And Udo Kier is like, manages to...
Oh, no, we have to explain this. So he's not dead. A bloody hand rises from the barrels, and we thought he had suffered like gunshots and a significant fall, but no, he gets up.
Well, he's part vampire too.
Oh yeah, he's part vampire, and then like gets into this. I haven't seen Universal Soldier, so I didn't pick that up. But like he gets into this armored vehicle, right? That's the one you mentioned.
Yeah,
Universal.
he's basically in the Mad Max version of the school bus.
Yeah. Okay, so this all makes sense. So now, like, we're kind of in Speed, we're kind of in Universal Soldier, because the head robber is chasing them and, like, ramming the back of the school bus, and one of the sheriff's deputies is driving the bus. Treat Williams, Aunt Becky, for some reason, and Carl, the scientist, are on the bus.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that goes on for a little while, right?
They're just kind of a boring chase where you have the scenes from Universal Soldier, but they're shot in such a way you can't see that it's different characters driving the buses. Eventually, Udo Kier manages to shoot the cop, and then he manages to shoot Carl Wendt / TJ Tyne / that dude from Bones / Todd from Ghost World. So Aunt Becky is like in charge of disarming the bomb while Treat Williams has to drive the bus.
Yep.
And he's like, well, what are the colors of the wires? But earlier in the movie, they made all the wires black to confuse anybody, to make it impossible to disarm.
It's almost as if they foresaw the very real possibility that somebody would get to the bomb and try to disarm it.
And put it on a bus. Yeah.
Going 50 miles an hour. Okay. Yeah. So Treat Williams, who also doesn't know anything about bombs, is now verbally coaching Aunt Becky to disarm the bomb for reasons.
I thought what was going to happen is she would be like, which wire should I cut? And then she would cut the opposite wire each time and use his bad luck to kind of like pay off that whole storyline.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like she cut the wire that he told her to cut in the end, but also I think that just might be sloppy filmmaking because it wasn't obvious one way or another. So
well, all the wires were black, so I mean, whatever. The views in the background of this chase are spectacular. Frank and I were thinking that maybe it was filmed in Canyonlands because it's just beautiful. Very
a scenic tour of Canyonlands.
Yeah, just really lovely. Anyway, okay, so they disarm the bomb. The head robber, I don't know what, he's dead again.
Yeah, he like drives off the cliff or something and then explodes. Oh yeah, no, what happens is that he and so he gets on their bus somehow?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Treat Williams pushes Aunt Becky out of the moving car.
Yeah.
And then they both drive over the cliff.
Yeah.
And then like
explodes.
Treat Williams was somehow off the bus before it fell off the cliff and exploded, but we don't see how because he wasn't in the original shots.
Yeah.
So
yeah, they don't really address it. He emerges from the smoke. He and Aunt Becky share a kiss. It's just like the end of Speed, where Sandra Bullock was explaining that when people go through a very intense experience together, they develop intense feelings for each other. So I'm so glad I watched Speed because it explained this kiss, which was otherwise kind of out of nowhere.
They're both traumatized.
Yes. And it's absolutely understandable. You go through like some crazy stuff, you act a little nuts. Right? Because you have to come down from the rush. You have to like process all the things you went through. Any odd behavior, completely excusable, great. We do get a little bit of story wrap up for some of the other characters, including Mr. Gould, who at some point in the movie switched from Tums to guzzling Pepto-Bismol. And when Miss New York 1995 hands him a second full bottle of Pepto-Bismol, he looks at it and he's like, nah, I'm going to quit cold turkey because that's how it works.
It was almost a joke. And
it didn't work. That joke
and they're
did
like,
not.
how can we congratulate you, Treat Williams? And he's like, or celebrate. He's like, I could use a job. And they're like, okay, we'll see what we can do. And that was, the wrap up to that storyline, I guess. And Becky's out of a job because her senator is dead.
Yeah, the
not even a real senator. He's a state senator too. Like, does a state senator have this many people following him around? Like,
anyway, so going back to the purchasing of film footage from other movies, does that grant this movie a higher rating in quality and production value, or a lower rating because they didn't do the work themselves?
That it's cheating. I don't know. I don't know if you can reward cheating because I'm not Major League Baseball and these aren't the Houston Astros here. God, I don't know. Before we get to our numbers, though, any final notes on the movie itself for you? Because there's a couple of things I forgot to mention or I have not mentioned.
One note is that it was a perfectly serviceable movie.
Yeah. So I also wanted to note that the movie here was written, if you can call it that, by a man named Sean McGinley, whose probably biggest claim to fame was he made The Great Buck Howard, which is a movie that is essentially a slightly fictionalized version of The Amazing Kreskin. So it's basically a biopic of The Amazing Kreskin as portrayed by John Malkovich, which is kind of a fun movie, but also is way too nice to Kreskin, who seems like a bad dude. The other note I forgot to share is, so there are a bunch of faceless henchmen in this movie.
Yes.
One of them is David, quote unquote, Shark Freilich.
Okay.
So, and I just have to note, anytime a person has shark listed in quotation marks between their names, and he's one of these, like, I would call him a B movie actor, but he's probably more of a C movie actor. But he played the title character in Uncle Sam. Do you know Uncle Sam, Meredith?
I don't know that
Uncle
one.
Sam. Okay, so you know how holidays have horror movies?
Yeah.
Uncle Sam is the 4th of July horror movie.
Oh.
It was directed by Bill Lustig, and it was a script written by your hero and mine, Larry Cohen, who made the stuff and wrote... What was the one we watched? It's Alive. I made you watch It's Alive, the killer baby movie. Yeah. And So he plays the evil, murderous patriot who he's killed in action, comes back, and then he comes back to life somehow because of a child's wish and starts killing people who are questioning their patriotism.
My God, no.
It's kind of awesome and stupid and amazing. So, all right. To the scores.
Amazing. Okay, let's start with effort. How would you rank that?
Okay, so Treat Williams always gives more than what you need.
Yeah.
Everything else is just shot so boring and flat, and anything that's good in this movie is completely stolen from another movie. So it gets a 4. Like, this is a 4 effort. Udo Kier looks like he's trying, but he looks like he's trying to the detriment of the movie. Like, he should be an underactor, not an overactor, like David Duchovny.
What about quality / production value?
This is tough. I'm just going to go right in the middle and say 5. Because, I mean, you have a scene from Terminator 2, which is arguably an action set piece by the guy who is probably the best in history at making action set pieces, Jim Cameron. But it's also, cobbled together with a bunch of, like, reverse shots of no-budget nonsense. So, I'm going to be generous and give it a 5 there.
That's fair. Okay. Entertainment value.
The middle. So I enjoy Treat Williams. I enjoy Die Hard in a blank movies, but this is probably the most boring Die Hard in a blank movie that I've ever witnessed. You have your top tier Die Hard in a blank movies like Die Hard on a Bus with Speed, and you have your kind of middle tier ones like Bruce Campbell in Terminal Invasion, where it's Die Hard but in a closed airport. God, there's so many of these things. 4. This is a 4. You are making a Die Hard and you can't make it entertaining? Come on, get it together, people.
How hard is it? Just do a Die Hard.
I mean, Rick and Morty knew.
How about sense making?
Oh, God. 3. I don't know anybody's motivation anytime in this movie. I don't know why you have to rob the nuclear facility to get to another nuclear facility. I don't know why putting the bus on a bomb and driving it 20 miles is going to make a difference at all. But, what can you do?
The one thing that I really thought that they should have clarified was the nerd robber / bomb builder's motivations, because he seemed to be the only character who had a moral conviction for his actions. They alluded to it, but they did not explain it.
Yeah, he was our true believer, and he was siding with Treat Williams at the end because we knew that Udo Kier had gone too far.
Yeah.
But we don't know what their true beliefs were.
Yeah, that might have made it interesting. Yeah.
There could have been some sort of, moral gray area or anything in this movie. There could have been something in this movie,
There could
is what
have
I'm
been.
saying.
This movie could have been a contender, but alas. All right, what are we watching next?
The movie Shooter, that's a Western that he is a sentimental favorite of Fred Olen Ray himself. All right. So let's do a quick wrap up then. Wrap up.
Oh, yeah.
So until next time, I've been Kennedy.
And I've been Meredith.
All right. See you then.
Going Over Our Freds was created and produced by us, Michael Kennedy and Meredith Halsey.
Our theme was composed and performed by Justin Nozick. Find more music for him at Bandcamp. Search for The Plague Physicians.
Artwork by Michael Kennedy. Special thanks to everyone who helped make the season possible, including the friends and family who let us watch these movies instead of this year's Academy Award nominees. And thank you for listening.
If you'd like to hear more from us, subscribe to Going Over Our Freds on your favorite podcast app. Follow us on Twitter at Goof Podcast, and find us on Instagram at Going Over Our Freds.
This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. For questions, comments, and complaints, email us at goingoverourfreds@gmail.com.
Thanks. All right, I'm going to hit stop. Stop it.